back, everyone. You know, for a second, I totally forgot what podcast we were doing, but now my head's all over the place this morning.
I love it.
This is our 5th or 6th episode on Jung, on the book. What is it called?
Discovered Self.
Undiscovered. It's not that it's unknown. It's just that you haven't found it yet.
Yes,
it's there.
Right.
It's there to be found, and I think it's a nice part of calling it undiscovered.
The undiscovered self.
So let's keep moving through this. I've actually been enjoying this because there's a lot we can talk about with it.
Okay, the book. The man who looks only outside and quells before the big battalions has no resource with which to combat the evidence of his senses and his reason.
So if you have all this external input that's happening in your life, doesn't matter what it is. Could be a relationship thing, anything that's happening on the inside. If you haven't discovered yourself internally, if you haven't found that self-awareness, that self-knowledge, and actually had to deal with the emotions and thoughts that come through because of the externalities, you're screwed. You have no defenses. You have no armaments. You have no way to actually integrate with those experiences that are happening externally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and he says, I like this, he says, we are all fascinated by statistical truths.
Yeah, I mean...
fascinated. I love how he used that word. That was a proper word.
Well, you think about it. Like, analytics nowadays, everybody wants to know, what are the numbers? What are the conversions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How does this relate
We're always
to this?
judging, yeah.
All we want to do is compare everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can put a number to it, then we're like, ooh, now we have something interesting. There's a measurable difference between individuals.
Yes, and comparing yourself with others. Let's dive into a little bit more micro here. So when you compare yourself with someone else, even though you're two separate individuals, and I look at creational laws. And so when I'm looking at creational laws, I'm looking at creation. Yeah, there's a tree, and we've categorized it as a poplar tree.
Yeah.
Or an oak tree, and we've gave it distinctions, and it has similarities in the way that it looks.
But is it a tree? It's a tree.
Right. But I mean, whenever we look at, we've diagnosed species, and then we have subspecies, and we look at, and we have Latin names for everything, and we just categorize, scientifically, we categorize everything, and so now we would say, okay, you're a citizen of the United States, white male from East Coast.
Sure.
And so now we've categorized you, we've labeled you, so now we can compare you with somebody that's on the West Coast from California that's Hispanic.
But that's really like a function of context.
And then it becomes, are you less than or greater than?
But that's the thing. They've taken the statistics and the measure of a statistics, which is a context, a mathematical theorized context of an individual, and then use that ahead of the actual individual itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's almost taking the front gate. It's not looking at that. These are truly all trees, and each tree is individual in the shape of its bark, its branches, everything. But because it's a poplar, there's 20,000 of them. You know what I mean? And so that takes the leading point of it, not the individual specific one-off characteristics of that one tree.
But I kind of what I want to talk about is when we begin to get our self-worth out of comparing ourselves with others.
Oh, so with like comparative statistical theories?
Yeah, no, in the sense of like, okay, so I go on social media and I see somebody that I idolize or like. And then there's a tribe of the same type of people.
Okay.
So now I'm following, maybe I'm following everyone that, is liking, this certain car brand. So now I'm associating myself with that tribe. So now advertisers are advertising like most everybody wears. If you like this car, most everybody wears these type of clothes. They wear this watch.
Sure.
They wear these type of, driving gloves. You're a sports car enthusiast. So now I'm getting like all these different types of ads to associate me with the tribe. And so now I'm externally changing my appearance, changing the clothes that I wear.
To assimilate with that group?
To assimilate with that group because I'm comparing myself with these individuals that I may idolize, and I'm comparing myself with the group as a whole.
But you need to ask yourself that question, why are you idolizing them?
This is where I want to get to.
And then what happens when the group dissipates? What are you left with? This goes way back to an earlier episode we had talked about on the way to love in regards to attachment. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm attaching myself with this idea of this group. Statistically, how they're seen by everybody else, I want to associate with it. But when that group begins to dissolve, you're left with nothing. You're empty internally. So you took this theory you had about this group, this setting, how they dress, how they act, whatever they might be, this tribe, And I said, I am the tribe. No, you're not the tribe. You're not at all. You're a human being and you have very individual characteristics. You can choose to associate, but do not let it define you.
Because this is what we see. So we'll use this example. So now I wear these certain clothes that this tribe is wearing. And then I'm like, damn, this looks good. You know, so I'm judging externally off of this. So then I'm going to say, oh, okay, we'll use the car thing. I'm going to take a picture of the steering wheel with the emblem in it.
Yeah, my hand on the thing with
my watch.
With a big Rolex.
And I've got a Mercedes symbol with the big Rolex or Porsche or Lamborghini, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a picture of that. I'm going to use hashtags.
Little do they know the guy's in an Amazon Sprinter van truck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he stole the Rolex out of the package.
Yeah, or it's a fake one he bought for $20. But yeah, so now I'm posting this using hashtags in hopes to be validated.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm taking
Well, they're playing probabilities. Your hashtag is a play on probability. Because I then take this and cross associate or try and build a correlation that may not even be there. I could do a post and it could be a picture of an orange, right? But then I could be doing hashtags about like get rich quick. What is the association here?
Yes.
So what you're doing is you're playing this bad comparative analytical probability game of using the hashtags. Yeah.
I just received that.
You got a picture of oranges? See what I mean?
Yeah, that happened to you with the coffee lady too.
Yeah, this is precisely correct.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I'm looking at this, I'm like, it's interesting that these drivers, these external drivers is what you're putting your weight towards. And then you hope that something comes from it, but you're left with no internal defenses, no true remedy of the thoughts when those things disappear. Because the groups they're transient. They come and go. You know, they're like a cloud in the sky. Same with styles of clothing or types of cars. You know, Mercedes may be great today, but, you know, 70 years ago, only Nazis drove them.
Yeah, exactly. Is Tesla going to be, you know, a new car, a new one from there? You know, the type of, you know, like, well, you remember like the Prius thing? You know, like I'm an environmentalist. You must, you know, George Clooney was driving a Prius.
Everybody's got to get in a Prius.
You see what I'm saying? You know, like, and there's an association with that, you know, Subaru association with that. Big trucks, Texas, you know, so big diesel trucks, you know. What I want people to understand though is that moment that you look yourself in the mirror and you're feeling good and you're like, man, I got my shit together. It's an illusion.
Yeah, that is an illusion.
Yeah, because you have a Ralph Lauren shirt on and it makes you feel good and look good, and you have that watch on and you know you're fixing to get into your car. Now all of a sudden there's this buzz that you get, almost like a caffeine buzz that you get, and there's this euphoria.
You're getting dopamine hits.
You're getting dope. Yes, there we go.
But the dopamine hits are not coming from strong internal knowing thoughts. They're coming from external observations of the world and what you think is classified as a win.
Like reading this book and seeing some brilliance in a statement and then getting a dopamine hit off of that because you learned something, and then you can apply it to your life.
And I test it all the time.
Yes.
Was that dopamine hit legitimate? Oh, actually it was. Now this is something that's of some worth. That's when you underline that damn thing.
Yeah, and he says, conversely, those personages who strut about on the world stage and whose voices are heard far and wide seem to the uncritical public to be borne along on some mass movement or on the tide of public opinion. And for this reason, are either applauded or he's excregated.
Yeah. So, dude, you're strutting around, creating a big scene. The masses put you there. That's what it's all about. Or were you actually...
He's talking about social media in 1950s.
In the 1950s. That's exactly what it is. It's, you know, it doesn't matter whether the stage is physical or digital. Someone's putting you up there.
Yeah, and he says, since mass suggestion plays the predominant role here.
Mass suggestion, is this the playbook for Instagram and Facebook?
Or Snapchat or
or Snapchat or any social media?
It remains a mute point whether their message is their own, for which they are personally responsible. So now we're imposing on free will and taking 100% responsibility out of the individual.
Well, and now you've put them up on a stage. Are they actually speaking for themselves? About themselves, how they specifically think, or are they just saying what the world wants to hear?
Because we all love those people that...
Well, you're only going to say what the world wants to hear. It's like more likes.
Yes.
I'm only going to dress to how the world wants to see me.
And then we love those iconic people, that iconoclast type that just have made their own. That's the truth. When you can make your own individual way and you literally say, fuck all of this. This is who I am. I'm becoming self-aware enough to understand who I am. And in that process of understanding the nuances, whether they agree or disagree, if I'm going to post something, I'm going to post this because it is me.
Right.
Not,
it may not be
because
popular.
I'm searching. Yeah, and it may not be popular. So when you're judging based off of the tribe that you're basically living in, or you're judging this post, whether it's going to be popular or not, and how many likes I'm going to get. Now you've given up your free will to the masses, and you've given up your free will to social media.
And the free will of your thoughts.
Yes. And he says, for which they are personally responsible, or whether they merely function as a megaphone for collective opinion.
That's what, you at some point, you see a lot of these people are just a megaphone for collective opinion.
Yeah, and so he goes into the root problem of this.
So
he's going to solve social media issues right now.
Go for it, Jung.
Under these circumstances, it is a small wonder that individual judgment grows increasingly uncertain of itself, and that responsibility is collectivized as much as possible. So let's stop it. So I want to use the words, judgment grows increasingly uncertain.
Yeah, so over time, am I making the right choice? Your judgment's completely gone because you're so far past doing what was who you are. Now you're doing it for everybody else. Mm-hmm. Should I have even said that? Even though the public opinion enjoys it, they're agreeing with it, they applaud me for it, it is absolutely far past any normal, sound, rational judgment I would have had if I was true to myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I want you to take that a step further, Alex. What is self? What is myself? How am I judging it off of myself compared to judging it externally? How am I judging internally?
Would I have ever really said that? Would I have ever truly associated with this group? If I didn't realize or perceive something as what I thought was valuable, would I have ever done this in the first place? Say I was in a different country, grew up poor, never even had access to it. Mm-hmm. Would I have done the same thing?
Yes, exactly.
Is it a true thing that I'm doing?
Exactly.
No, it absolutely is not. Remove yourself from that current perspective that you have. Take that third-party view and discover the legitimacy of what is actually going on. And what you'll find is a majority of it is completely illegitimate.
So when you use the word illegitimate,
yeah,
because I'm trying to make this ultra clear for people. I'm really pushing. I'm not wanting to leave this subject yet because this is a huge problem we have globally. Yeah. And we're not going to solve the world's greatest issues until we have people take 100% responsibility for who they are.
We'll do a metaphor here. I'm an NGO, non-governmental organization. I do charitable stuff. We want to say that we are sustainable because that's what the world wants to hear, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, but why are we still raking the Earth's oceans of all this stuff and killing it? Yes. But I look sustainable because I put a label on a can or did whatever, but I'm still killing a majority of these things. It's irreplaceable what I'm doing. That's illegitimate. This happens day in and day out. That's what the company. People lead those companies.
Well, we saw that yesterday. I'm not going to call it the company, but I was drinking a little protein drink with no sugar or whatever, and it said non-dairy product. And then the first ingredient was milk protein isolate.
You're telling me because it's an isolate and it came from milk, because it's a derivative of it, it's not truly dairy? That's illegitimate.
Yeah. But that's this whole play is what's happening right now globally.
Whether it's a business, a protein drink, or a human being, the thoughts are illegitimate. The actions are truly illegitimate to what the true nature of that person is.
Because you were being fake.
Because you're being fake.
Based off of the megaphone of the masses.
What people want to hear. I want to put that on the can because it makes people feel better about buying it. But what they don't know is every time they buy it, they kill the ocean more. Every time I drink it, I'm drinking more milk. It's a scam. It's illegitimate. You're scamming yourselves.
Or every time I post this picture to get acceptance and likes, I'm taking away from who I am as an individual. And I'm taking the responsibility of me to be self-aware enough to understand who I am as an individual.
Or be okay with my actions for how I choose to do them rather than use everybody else as the benchmark.
Yes.
You'd never know who you are. You'd never know what the right action was or if it was the best for you because you're just saying the world decides for me what's good.
Because every great company and every great individual always was the ones that stepped out of the box.
Well, you have to.
They always change.
Do you know why they're out of the box?
World.
Think about why they're out of the box. Because they're not a statistic. They're truly individualized. That's why it seems out of the box because all of us associate ourselves in the statistical mass. So these people seem like anomalies when they're the one that's a real human being. We're the ones walking around like some slumbering anomaly.
But what's so funny is it's because I'm going to Seattle and I'll be posting pictures of when I'm up in Seattle. Yeah. Because I just enjoy doing it and the scenery is so beautiful and all that. But people are going to literally look at that for 1 second, maybe like it, and then they're on with the rest of their life. They're not saying that I went on a plane and I went to Seattle, and they're just like, oh, that's pretty. Like, next.
Yeah.
People really don't, people's lives, they're not thinking about, it makes you narcissistic.
You know, it reminds me of terrorism.
Yes.
Let me tell you why. Because a horrible terrorist act will happen. How many people do you think have already forgotten about that huge explosion that happened in the Middle East at that fertilizer plant? I probably just reminded somebody talking about it.
Yes. That was Beirut, right?
Yeah, something so horrific that happens, but it's already gone. It's like you
We're
saw
on
it
to
for
the
a
next
moment
news
and you're
cycle.
on to the next thing.
Yep.
That's what it is. And then at that point, it's just a statistic.
So why are we basing our whole lives?
Because we thought it was scientific. We thought it was valid. But really, it's just a bullshit theory we're living by. Like someone says you can't have anti-gravity. Don't tell me that fucking nonsense. That's what it is. It's total nonsense. Everything has to have an opposite. Like a battery's charge. What do you tell me? If there's gravity, there's got to be an opposite of gravity. Look at a black hole. Fuck off.
Mm-hmm. So
your theory sucks. Look what it's doing to mankind. But look how pervasive it is. You want to know why? Because it's easy. It doesn't require thought. Like he said, there's no responsibility. Go back, read the quote.
It remains a moot point whether the message is their own, for which they are personally responsible, or whether they merely function as a megaphone for collective opinion. Under these circumstances, it is small wonder that individual judgment grows increasingly uncertain of itself and that responsibility is collectivized.
Oh, responsibility is collectivized. Nobody's responsible then. So if we're all a part of this together, you know what you can do? Pass the buck all day long.
Well, listen to what he says, pass the buck. He says, shuffled off by the individual and delegated to a corporate body.
See what I mean? You know, and so you know that point I made about, tuna tin cans raking the ocean?
Mm-hmm.
You're still buying the tuna. They will continue to rake the oceans. It is a moot point, like he's speaking about the label. You are the key driver through your human behavior, through your lack of self-awareness that tells them to keep doing this.
Yeah, let's go to his stream because he talks about that. But I want to talk about this as because we see this with communism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a perfect example of, and that's probably what he's thinking of.
Well, China still is. It's 1957. China's still communist.
Yeah. So whenever you look at communism in and of itself, it's a black hole.
It makes everybody a statistic.
Yes.
You are of no value of a human being. You are frankly a labor statistic to the state and nothing else.
And we need to only look at Russia if we want to look in modern times and see what Stalin did. Whenever you had these beautiful colored czars that created amazing paintings, had amazing buildings. They still have one. After the guy built the what's the Greek Orthodox church that's there in
St. Petersburg.
Yeah, and he plucked his eyes out because he said this is the most beautiful thing he'd ever saw and built. Yeah, it's extreme, whatever. But there was this collective movement in Russia before communism came over of where you saw individuality and you saw creativity. And you had Russian philosophers and everything else. And then Stalin comes in, everything gets torn down, art gets taken away.
People
and now look
death.
at it.
Remember all the people starving to death? Mm-hmm. There were meat markets of human flesh.
It's gray, black, and white.
It's statistics. Mm-hmm. It's just become one giant statistic. And who are the people going to blame at that point? The state? Who takes the responsibility? You're going to point fingers and blame. You let them roll in.
Mm-hmm.
It was your choice.
You're starving to death? That's
your
choice.
If you're starving to death, are you going to keep begging the state for food?
Well, we saw Venezuela and South America, we're seeing this. Anytime you leave it up to the state, it's always going to let you down.
Every time.
And it's not just the state, because he talks about the state a lot, and I didn't want to get too political with that. But Alexander, you know as well as I do, whenever you put the responsibility to someone else to take care of you as an individual, whenever you give up that free will, what begins to happen? We were hiking, and I remember you telling me this. We were talking about the Law of One and Raw, and we have a whole series of Raw teachings. And you said something to me, and we were talking about dreams.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, even in that subconscious dream, I was sharing with you a situation where this person was taking over my free will in the dream. Mm-hmm. And then you were talking about our subconscious state.
Right.
And how real our dreams are, just as real as they are a reality, just as much as reality in the wakened world. And all you've done, slept world.
You've reaffirmed giving away your power of thought, emotion, control, and everything, even to the dream state. Mm-hmm. So this other thing, a figment of your imagination in the dream state, has rendered you powerless because of your thoughts. because of the thoughts you have all day long have carried over into the subconscious.
Yes.
And a negative affirmation stripping you of who you really are. That's what it is. These things will follow you. If you let the state do it, you're doing it to yourself, and you're going to do it to your subconscious.
And you're carrying it over into the subconscious as you're constantly going on Instagram and seeing that post and see how many likes you got, and seeing and giving up your free will to this collective megaphone that is called social media. And because we have a lot of young people that listen to this podcast, this is why I'm staying on this whole topic. Because I think it's the problem that we're facing today. We're not going to solve climate stability if we as individuals don't take 100% responsibility.
Yeah, we can't solve it with statistics.
Facebook is not going to solve climate stability.
If someone said, "Oh, on average everything's getting better," why? Because 20 million wind turbines are put in the US, but the rest of the world said fuck it all. The average doesn't tell you the truth.
How much did they say it would be? What would be the cost to solve climate stability? Have they given a number, like a cost, how much it would cost?
Yeah, they probably have.
Is it billions of dollars?
But the thing is, it's a statistic. Even if you put all the money in it, what does that just give people the idea that they can still continue to throw more plastic in the rivers? Continue to keep the lights on longer?
That's where I'm getting at.
It doesn't, the policy and money, okay, and investment in these things doesn't do anything.
So corporations and governments say, okay, we're going 100% on climate stability, and we're going to give billions of dollars to help that.
But like you said, it's not the corporation.
But then the guy that throws the piece of trash in the river, he's responsible for that. Until we take responsibility, especially for those third world countries, it's throwing the trash in the river. First world countries, it's your purchasing power.
Yes.
You as a consumer, that is your responsibility.
The corporations care about the dollar. So if you make a proper choice, they will bend to your will all day long.
The state does not have power over you.
They have zero power.
And he talks about that over and over again. That's the main thing. He says, in reality, it is only a camouflage for those individuals who know how to manipulate. He's talking about the state. Mm-hmm. Thus, the continental state drifts into the situation of a primitive form of society, namely the communism of a primitive tribe where everybody is subject to the autocratic rule of a chief or an
oligarchy. So think about it. How pissed off were people getting at Donald Trump? People that opposed him.
Oh,
the emotional states, everything. They let him control their emotional states.
They were giving up their free will.
They didn't realize it.
Whether they loved him or they hated him, they were giving up their free will to one man.
Completely.
And what is one man going to do?
Nothing. But what can 300 million people do just in the United States alone, as an example? They can change the direction of the United States.
What if we said, because we have Asian hate right now, we had Black Lives Matter, all that. What if we 300 million of us said, we're done with racism. This is an archaic, stupid. Mm-hmm. It has caused enough hate already. All 300 of us, we're done. And as individuals, we're going to make sure the words that we say, mm-hmm. The way, I don't care what you say. I care about how I think and feel about it.
Correct.
And I've gone over in my head tons of times to look at it, as a white privileged male, and gone over this in for myself, because you may say a racial slur, but for me, I'm not concerned about calling you out.
No,
it's not. That's not my concern. My concern is to make
sure
those invisible thoughts that I have in my head, that I am self-aware enough to keep those in check.
Yeah.
And if you had 300 million people that decided to say that, racism would vanish.
Gone. It wouldn't exist. It ceased to exist.
And so to rely on Joe Biden or Donald Trump or
to put a policy in
Google
place,
or something like that.
No external thing, no policy, nothing written by a state will ever be able to change what's going on inside a person's head.
It's not an autocratic rule.
No, it's not. That's not your answer. Is not an autocratic rule. It's not an oligarchy. It's not the British monarchs coming in and saying this is what we're doing.
And every time, whether it's fascism, communism, capitalism, it doesn't matter what ism is. Yeah. He says this. He says it drifts, and he uses the word so good. Drift is a great word. The state drifts in the situation of a primitive form of society. It always backfires when the power is given to the state.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, it always backfires. It drifts slowly. Like, look at what capitalism has happened in the United States. It drifts slowly into a primitive form.
Of course it's primitive. It's like the chimpanzee with the largest set of testicles. Everybody will bow down to him. He's the loudest. He's the largest, but he drifts around all the time. And when he dies, another big boy takes his spot.
Just that quick.
And everyone bows down and beckons to him in a state of fear.
But what if that whole, if they were self-aware enough.
They're not.
They would all say, okay, this is decentralized. Mm-hmm. We're each going to take 100% responsibility for the actions that we do. And just because he has bigger testicles than me, that biological factor that he was blessed with doesn't affect how I go forage for food or how I mate with.
Where's your internal strength?
Why am I giving up as a younger male monkey? Why am I allowing him to go into the harem that he's established over that? And this is what's happened in the United States is when we give up our sovereignty, when we give up our free will of who we are, and we're doing it not just as individuals, but we're doing it with data. And I know we're a higher density living podcast, and we do this a lot over at TCAS, but I want people to understand your thoughts are through these computers.
They're capturing
and through
the thoughts
these phones
all day.
And you're giving that up to others. And I want you to explain that with data.
Yeah. What you're doing is like, if say for instance, Facebook has the largest set of testicles, right? And they're just flaunting it around to everybody. So all the other tech companies are, they're bowing down. Oh my gosh, do this, do that. And all you're doing is just giving them more of that power, more of this idea that they're the biggest chimp in the bunch. The way you talk about them, the way you put them in the news, the more you use their systems, you're just continuing to give them power, and you're just stripping it away from yourself. You're giving them financial resources, and you get nothing in return. They get all the bananas. You get zilch.
And you're creating, I'm going to use a prime example, athletes at NCAA.
Yep.
So all these schools, this is controversial, but I love this. All these schools are getting shitloads of money.
Tons.
Well, let's use Olympic athletes.
Yeah.
How much does an Olympic athlete get paid to go represent the United States after he's given his whole life?
What do they get, like $19,000 per gold medal?
I don't even think it's that much.
Maybe
we'd
less.
have to look it up.
Yeah, maybe less. They rely on sponsors if they can get it.
So ABC or NBC, whoever gets the contract, how much when we watch the Olympics, how much are they making with all the commercials and stuff?
It's just a ridiculous amount of money.
And how much are the athletes making?
Nothing. And think about how much the tourism industry and everything in that area, the state makes money. The chimps running the newscast make the money, but the athletes that put in the work.
So
zilch.
I'm going to film you and all the work that you've done.
Yeah.
And I make 99.9% of the money. But you, that's actually done all the work and dedicated your life and been ultra disciplined, a phenomenal person, you get nothing.
That's correct.
And that's what's happening with our data.
It happens with everything. It's everything. This is just one context of it is your data.
Yeah.
We're doing the same things all over again. That's the drift. It's drifted from, CNBC, NBC, ABC, pictures of the news, and then now you're holding the camera, doing all the work. So you've even taken the cameraman's job. They don't even have to do it anymore. They're paying less. You've taken over all the work, and then you've given them all the profit, all the power.
It's crazy. So let's end this with this. How do we take our power back? Not just with data, because that's our thoughts.
Yeah.
But how do we take our power back as an individual?
The first thing you do is
you go to turtle.co.
Yeah. Go to turtle.co and you sign up. Now, the first thing you do is you recognize all these statistical measures in your life. What is it that I've put a number on that's been defining me? Is it my bank account? Is it how many likes I have? Is it how many followers? Is it how many legitimate friends I have?
My job title?
Yeah. My job title. Is it how many books I own that define how smart I am? How many, PhDs I may have? If that's what you're looking at, that's when you take the first step of recognition that this is false. This is an illegitimate way of defining who I am as a human being. I'm making myself more of a statistics by attaching myself to those things. So once you make that recognition, that first step, then you can be like, okay, I'm going to focus on how many likes I have. Not important anymore. That has no power over me. I'm not going to look at it. My bank account, depending on that number and my comparative relation to everyone else, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to work because I care about something, not just for the paycheck, because I truly want to have that output, because it does good for me as a human being, and that'll do good for others. And when you start to check those things off the list, the only thing you'd be left with is you as a human being and your thoughts, who you truly are. And take those steps one by one. Knock off all those bad theories. Check by check by check. Gone, bye. And then next time you have a conversation, it'll be a real conversation. And whether it's with yourself or somebody else.
And don't be afraid to dive into yourself. You have so much creative abilities that only you have.
Yeah.
There's no one that has the creative ability. Alexander has a gift of being able to speak in front of crowds and people and stuff. You have that gift. That's your gift.
It's just me.
That creation gave to you.
Yeah.
And using that with spirit gives this idea of this you being able to inspire others through that unique creative gift. But if you begin to say, well, let me compare myself with Tony Robbins. Let me compare myself with all these great speakers. You know, President Obama was a great speaker.
I'm already losing.
Yeah, you've given up your creativity.
Yeah.
And I encourage everyone, if you start delving into yourself as an individual, you are going to find so many things that are amazing just about you.
Yeah.
And your self-worth of who you are begins to grow as an individual. And what are like, let's just leave like one or two things, Alex, and then we'll close. What are some specific things, whether it may be meditation, being self-aware, that they can start getting off of this megaphone and start understanding who they are as an individual?
You know what's a really simple one? Walk into your closet where you have your clothes.
I need to do this.
Ask yourself why you bought that.
I did that the other day.
I'm just gonna leave with that one thing. Just ask yourself why you bought that.
Oh, that's such a good practice.
If you can't remember in your head, it's worthless. But you're associated with it and you hold on to it. Get rid of it. It doesn't belong. And then because you've asked that question, you've done that practice in the physical. Practice that physically with things around your house, whatever it might be. And then you're going to realize that affirmation of this physical thing is going to start to bury into the subconscious. Then you're going to be like asking yourself these thoughts. Why did I have that thought? Why did I think this way? Why did I see that this was important? Why did I feel like I needed to hold on to it for so long? Okay? So start with one simple thing and then just do it many times over. Practice. And then build your way into meditation after you're done with all that stuff and then do that for the next 50 years.
Everyone, we encourage you to subscribe. You can go to higherdensityliving.com. If you love YouTube, if you love Spotify, Apple Podcasts, please make sure you share. It's free for us instead of paying for ads or whatever if we have word of mouth. So if this podcast has been, we'll use this word, we heard it earlier. If this podcast has been a blessing, somebody said that earlier, which you talked about the word. We asked Courage, look up the German definition of blessing. You were sharing it with.
Yeah, Proto-Germanic bloodeth.
But if this podcast has been of a help to you, we encourage you to share it with others. You can go, we're on everything, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just get the word out. And like I said, I'm fixing to leave Seattle, and we're going to try go Facebook Live, go Instagram Live or whatever, and have a few podcasts that way. So keep in tune for that. And we just want to let you know that you have all the power within you. And Ross speaks about that.
The Pleiadians speak about it.
The Pleiadians think about it, having that power within you.
Yeah.
What does that look like, Alex?
What does that power look like? It looks like you standing in front of a crowd of millions and they're telling you something you're not, and you are completely unfazed. And you can stand there and let them know that they are the ones that are sleepwalking. That's what that power looks like.
Freedom!
Paint my face blue, pull my kilt up.
Yes, it's time. What was that guy's name? Wallace or something like that?
William Wallace.
It's William Wallace time.
Yeah, the Bruce.